All right, let's see. I think maybe everyone is connected now. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex. I do visitor services and also some social media things at the Wharton Esherick Museum along with Katie. And today I'm going to be talking about gifts in the studio and Wharton's kind of practice of giving gifts to friends and loved ones. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the race, but especially about the Quan Yin statues in the bedroom and on the mantle down in the studio kind of showroom space. So I wanted to start off by talking about so these are the Quan Yin statues. They were given to Wharton by Lachlan McLaughlin, and I'll get into all of that later and a little bit more about them. But they're a matched set, and Quan Yin is a Buddhist sort of goddess. She's known as all of these different things: perceiver of sounds, perceiver of the world's sounds, the one who hearkens to the cries of the world, goddess of mercy. A lot of people refer to her as the Buddhist Madonna or the Buddhist Virgin Mary. Some other people have connected her to the figure of Mary Magdalene in Christian religions, but she's just the personification of Buddhist compassion and love. She's kind of historically comes out of an older Buddhist figure who was the Bodhisattva of compassion. I'm not going to try to butcher the pronunciation of the name in Hindi, but it's down at the bottom there. And something that I noticed when I was looking at the statues up close is that both statues, the one in the bedroom and in the studio, had been shattered and then really carefully repaired in different ways. Over time, you can see a lot of these cracks along them. And that was just making me think about how much care and thought and compassion Wharton was putting into keeping these gifts with him, what sort of prominent spaces they were occupying, and how important the gift-giving practice was to him in his relationships. So some other gifts that are in the studio that were talked about on recent programs, the basket up in the bedroom that was given to Wharton by Marjorie Content after one of her trips to New Mexico, the replicas of some gifts that Wharton gave to Hannah Veal, the Holzheimer curtain design, and then the little hanging woman light poles. There's obviously so many others. I didn't want to take up the whole 20 minutes just listing them all, but those are some prominent ones that we talked about recently. The race, which was made as a gift for his children, was carved in December of 1925, although it's actually dated 1920 because that was when Wharton first encountered the game on their sort of boat trip around Florida to get to Fairhope. And he sort of retroactively dated it when he was first introduced to that idea. And he made brass castings of it just in case the game ever gained popularity. And also he carved some dice that you can see in the top photo from the biography that were originally with the set, even though those are not in the studio. So back to the Quan Yin statues, I was really interested in hunting down more information about Lachlan McLaughlin, who gave the statues to Wharton. We didn't have a specific folder of correspondence between them and the archives, so I wasn't sure exactly what I'd be able to turn up. So I just started looking through the miscellaneous correspondence and the correspondence from old friends. And I saw a lot of these like sweet little gestures, some little gifts or thank you notes for gifts. I'm going to show some of my favorites. This was just a little postcard from Lou that just said, "Hello, Wharton, this made me think of you." And then this little image of, I assume like choir boys playing instruments was on the flip side. And there were a number of little postcards like that. Also a number of thank you notes. This one read, Dear Wharton, your package arrived today. Marguerite and I are delighted with the contents, although I'm a bit abashed by your generosity, which was also the sentiment in the next one, which was maybe my favorite one that I came across. And apologies for the language in advance. This is how it started. Wharton, dear, you are a self-made, hand-raised son of a bitch. I can't say more, there's a lady present. And he went on to say, you are part leprechaun, mischief lies deep within you. I can hear you say to Mims, let's take the chair down and let them find it. The old bastard would put his ears back and kick if I offered it to him. How right you are, and I am tearing up the pasture. But to what end? You know well that I'm not going to hurt you by being stubborn and haul it back. You know damn well I couldn't do that. So after the first explosion, it is a mixed explosion of affection, gratitude, and wrathful helplessness. I'm thinking long of the lovable friend you are and what your friendship means. You shouldn't have done it, damn your eyes, but I hope you will use it often. So I think he made a habit of giving maybe $2,000 of gifts for people's comfort. And I did find some correspondence from Lachlan McLaughlin. This was the first one that I was able to find, which was also sort of a thank you note. It reads, Dear Wharton, thank you for your kindness and for the tactful way you have handled me during the past week especially. I'm truthfully grateful. When entirely agreeable and convenient to you, drop in from time to time. So I found that one in the miscellaneous correspondence, and then it took me a while to find anything else that mentioned him. But I found some stories about him in an oral history with Jim and Georgie Leach. And in that, Bob asked, what had Mr. Mack done? And Georgie responded, well, he had lived in Michigan for a while, and he said it was the coldest place he'd ever lived in his life. And there was a factory, I think, that he was president of or something. And it was a certain kind of chairs and furniture that they made, and their name of the business was stamped in all the chairs. Not sure exactly what business he was talking about, but it was interesting to me to learn that McLaughlin had also worked in furniture and chairs. I'll get back to that in a minute. But he went on to say, I know that he said that he had lost money, and this place here that he had come to, I know he said that Gertrude said, this is the end, laddie. No, he said, we're only just beginning to live. But he said we lost everything. So they bought this place down here and he farmed it. So he had been a local farmer in the Valley Forge area, but also had a background in furniture. So then I found a bundle of correspondence in our archive folder of letters from close friends or old friends. I can't remember exactly what it says. And so these were just some little funny ones. The one on the far right was just a sheet with a giant question mark on it. Next to that is an invitation to cook an 8-pound prime rib roast. And the options for how to cook it are underdone, bloody, or rare. And just some other little jokes or like invitations for food that they sent to each other, or that Lachlan sent to Wharton. Here's one I found particularly funny. It says, it is with extreme regret we announce that at his residence in Valley Forge, PA, on the afternoon of May 3rd, 1948, Lachlan McLaughlin was still alive. P.S. Service will be held anytime you run out of Bass & Co. Pale Ale. And then these were some other letters that they exchanged that were more about kind of ideas. It seems like they sent a lot of books and pamphlets back and forth. This one on the left is talking about Sappho. The one kind of in the middle at the bottom there was also attached a little article about Frank Lloyd Wright, and Lachlan wrote, seems a dire calamity to be designated a celebrity. And then there was another one just listing some books that Wharton had lent to McLaughlin. Here's another letter that I found particularly touching. With something of more than regret, I look upon the sunset of the known past. I do not get enough light from the rising sun of the new era to be free from fear. I do not know I ever had faith in the opening verse of the opening page of the chapter of Maybe Endless Possibilities, which was written in 1934. So then this passage from the oral history with Jim and Georgie Leach, was kind of about the dynamic of their friendship. Georgie had worked for McLaughlin for a long time, so I'll read this excerpt. But I remember different times when Mr. Esherick would come into Mr. Max, and he always had something he was saying, some kind of greeting or something for each other. And he always wanted me to come on up with Mr. Mac to see something he was making. And he always wanted Mr. Mac's opinion. And Mr. Mac would say, no, no. He got to the place where he didn't want to go no place. But then he'd say, well, I'll go if you take Georgie. So then he'd say, all right, we'll come down this afternoon at such and such a time, and Georgie, you be ready to go. So then we'd come in and they'd look at each other, and Mr. Mac would look at the piece that Wharton wanted his opinion on, and he'd look and walk around and look, not saying anything, with his pipe in his mouth. And then after a while, he'd hold up his hand just like this. And so Wharton would get him a piece of chalk, and he'd mark the chalk with the chalk to cut this off. And he'd go round and round and do something else to it. And then he'd give Wharton back the piece of chalk, and Wharton would say, oh, applesauce. But I remember Mr. Mac saying later, you know, Wharton does listen to me, because he'd come back later. Wharton would ask him to come back and take another look. And he'd always say, I'll go if Georgie will go. And I used to like to, because those two, they'd always say such funny things to each other. This was in the old studio, which is now the museum. And he'd see that Mr. Esherick had cut away the place he'd marked with chalk. So they were close personal friends, but also Wharton got a lot of creative advice from McLaughlin. And then here was one more letter that I found particularly touching. January 1952, Wharton, before the flickering mental light that's born with these too many tears is entirely extinguished. It seems to me but just and proper I should voice my gratitude for the companionship you have extended to me this past quarter century. From you I have learned so much and also unlearned much. So being grateful to you, I say farewell. Go well and stay well. McLaughlin. Thank you. That's what I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Can you just mention some of the other gifts that, well, people asked me on a tour, the painting that's up in the bedroom, vertical painting of a woman that was given to him, or some of the gifts that were given to him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one you're talking about.
It's next to Miriam's photo in the bedroom.
I'll chime in here if you don't mind, Alex. I think you're talking about the one, it's actually a painting of Mary. It's on like a panel that leans over the, like by the bookcases. Is that right, Gay?
Yes, yeah. So that's Mary.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny that you are thinking of that, because it, we've been going back and forth with a professor in England right now who is writing a book about Ford Madox Ford. And that was painted by his companion, Janice Biala, who is you could do a little Googling of her artworks. But we just recently were doing some research, and we think that that was painted during their time visiting Esherick.
Yeah.
In fact, we found a letter where Janice or Ford is asking on behalf of Janice if she could have it back to finish it so she could put it in exhibition. So we're not sure that that actually happened. It could be that it's a slightly unfinished painting by her standards, but that would have been a gift that she gave to Esherick of his daughter.
Oh, great. How do you spell her last name?
It's Biala. And we can definitely link to her, there's a website of her work. I can put that in the follow-up email too.
Okay. Great.
If I could make a comment, please. Relative to the Quan Yin statue, when Bob Bascom first introduced those to me, he told me that they are to be given in pairs. Now, I don't know if there's a way of researching that or not, but if you give one of those to a person, you need to give them as a couple for some reason.
That's really interesting. I wasn't finding anything about that in my readings, but there's a lot of different, they've been Quan Yin has been a really prominent figure in Chinese culture for like hundreds and hundreds of years. So there's a lot of different kind of competing cultural traditions.
Is it maybe for people who need lots of compassion, double compassion?
Well, something that's interesting about her is that she is partial to women and children, but something that's like really specific to her is that she'll give help to anyone of kind of any background, no matter what your religious persuasion, gender, class, anything. She's kind of the kind goddess to go to for grace and compassion. Yeah.
Oh, Alex, what about details about the carved eagle above the loading door in the studio, which I have been led to believe was a gift from the head of PMA, but I know nothing more about it.
I could chime in on that one if you like, Alex. And certainly if you have thoughts to share, Alex, I'm not trying to step on your toes. But it's funny you ask about that one, Phil, because the blog post this month is also going to be about some of the gifts that weren't necessarily in this talk. And I was thinking about talking about the eagle. So I've just started looking into a little bit of the details in the archives, but there is an oral history that references it being a gift from Harold Mason, who was a manager for a time at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia. And so the eagles, I believe it says there were 4 of them that were part of a staircase there. So that I imagine them as sort of like, I don't know if finials is the right word, but these sort of ornaments on this ornate staircase that when it was removed, he gifted one to Esherick. And he says in the oral histories that he kept one for himself that is taking up all the space on his front porch.
That's quite a finial.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I haven't actually seen I'm hoping I could find a picture of the staircase. I don't know if I will, but yeah, they were ornately decorating it in some way. Yeah.
What about the mammoth or mastodon staircase?
There's a lot of gifts in the studio, aren't there? That was actually found by John Schmidt's son, who was mining in Alaska. There's a certain type of mining that I'm blanking on the names. Maybe somebody else in the group remembers. But yeah, he was mining in Alaska, brought that down to see if, I think he sort of probably thought, I know who could appreciate this in their home, and brought it for Esherick. The story that I've heard is that Esherick sort of carried the tusk around, trying to figure out where it belonged, and eventually just sort of realized, oh, it clicks right in here. It's a handrail. Yeah, I think it was in the 50s, although I'm not certain when that finally got added.
Yeah.
Good question, though. Thank you. Other thoughts? Other questions that people are wondering about?
I found it fascinating that McLaughlin was sort of a collaborator with Esherick. I understood the friendship, but for him to make comments on the work and Esherick following through on it, I find that fascinating. And the relationship is very typical of relationships I've heard with Esherick. They were always witty and deep and fun and so forth.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised to find that they had been collaborators, because I was expecting to find that Lachlan was just a neighbor farmer. So I also found that really interesting.
Can I ask a question? Hi, and I'm really enjoying this, by the way. I had heard that he had sometimes his gifts given little little ducks. You know, the way he made the little horses, he made little ducks. Does that sound right? Or have you ever heard that? No. Okay. I heard wrong then.
Well, I don't know. I can't. Katie, do you have any thoughts on that?
That he had made other little animals, in other words.
So he definitely made, I can't think of anything about like little ducks or like particular gifts like that necessarily
Okay.
for like friends of his, but certainly for his grandson. I think has lots of, you know, it really has a whole zoo of animals made by
Okay.
Esherick.
Okay.
And there may be, you know, I'm thinking of there's a footstool that he made for his daughter Ruth. And I've seen it with kind of many, the footstool is sort of modeled after her dog. If you can imagine, sort of like a terrier with a long back that you can rest your feet on. And I have seen a number of small terriers that could kind of stand behind it, just, you know, purely for fun, not that you would use them functionally. So certainly that sort of stuff is in the mix.
Okay, that's great. It just sounds like so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you're on the talk.
Thanks.
Any other questions or thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I had heard, I don't know if it was from Bob Bascom or maybe another docent, I don't know. So I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that he made spoons for hostess gifts when he was invited to dinner. He took a carved spoon. Is that correct? Do you know anybody?
I've heard similar stories. I've heard also he would take salad bowls and so forth as well. So that it wouldn't surprise me.
And certainly cutting boards, I would imagine, that's what I've been telling people, given the numerous displays of them.
Yes, I think cutting boards as well. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you had that sort of talent, you would probably, it would be easy or an enjoyable thing to share with people in that small kind of way.
Had you come across anything in the reading of the archives of letters that confirms those type of gifts for hostess gifts?
When I was flipping through, most of the time when they were thanking him for something, they wouldn't name what it actually was because they assumed that he knew. So it would just be like, thank you for your gift or thank you for your package. I think, yeah, Katie, did you want to add anything?
No, I think it's true. I mean, not that there's plenty more archives to be explored.
I've got a story relative to
Sure, yeah.
salad bowl gifts. Bob Bascom told me that one of his regular clients came to him, wanted to buy one of those salad bowls with the spoons, the spoon and fork combination, and Warden quoted her a price. And she said, Warden, that's rather expensive. She said, don't you understand? I'm giving this as a gift. He said, who's giving the gift, you or me?
That's fantastic, Rob. Thank you.
That's quick wit.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of exchanges and generosity and all of that stuff happening back and forth throughout the studio. We could have done like a 2-hour talk about gifts in a way. There's so many to choose from. Any other thoughts, Alex, or anyone else in the group before we wrap up for today? I've loved that this has turned into such a conversation. No? In that case, I would say it's been wonderful to be with you all. And Alex, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share, or?
Just that this little happy holidays wood block on this final slide I found in some of his correspondence with friends. And he has a little list at the bottom of all the people he wanted to send it to.
Mm,
So happy holidays to all of you from Wharton.
you as well. You are all a gift. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. This has been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining us. Take care.